When it comes to homage watches, we typically expect that a brand would reference a popular watch that many people might not be able to afford, but they would rather offer this alternative to that kind of watch. But with this Baltany field watch, field aviation watch, you'll be surprised that they're referencing a very obscure watch and modern at that. Find out which watch it is and why this is actually a compelling alternative aside from being a homage watch. When we talk about pilot's watches, what often comes to mind are large cases that are the envy of your typical G-Shocks, dials that are senior citizen friendly, and a crown that wants to be touched like it's almost illegal. But one look at this Baltany and you will surely wonder, why is this even called a pilot's watch? I didn't know that Tyrion Lannister flew a dragon. But hey, for a channel that features an impossibly small wrist, this should be the last place to launch such a complaint. See what I did there? Despite its dainty dimensions and rather simple design, there are still a few things that we can pick up from this more than decent aviator. As I strap this on my 6¼ inch wrist, it's pretty obvious that this tiny pilot's watch is made just for me. All that's missing is for me to train my dragon. Take that for a mental image. Another thing that's obvious though is that really thick case dimension that seems rather odd for this diameter. All of this is emphasized even more with those really short lugs. As customary, this simple ticker has a reliable Japanese caliber that will work hard for you. This is an NH38, which doesn't have a date function. Many of you may expect an aviator to have a date feature, but here it just helps with a cleaner and simpler dial. Remember that pilots' watches have oversized glove-friendly crowns? Here, it's smaller than usual, but it still has a decent enough grip for puny watch pirates like me. What I didn't like are these friction-fit bezels. It's a known fact that all Krakens went extinct back in 1847, and I wish that they took these kinds of bezels with them so I don't have to talk about them anymore. What I do want to talk about is that this is a countdown timer. So here you place the number of minutes that you want to count down to on the minute's hand rather than use the marker like how it is on die bezels. You don't find these often on watches, but I could make the argument that this is the more useful iteration of these watch components. This miniature air commander does get some props when it comes to the strap department. NATO straps are a good, affordable option for these already budget-friendly pieces, but here you could also see the rugged do-it-all appeal, even though the wearer could barely do anything, of course. Now let me show you something very unusual. Here I use an Artem silkcloth strap that's more than half the price of this actual watch itself and has this gorgeous weave texture over it. As much as it's a nice and premium feeling band, it does feel out of place with this case. Could it be because of the disparity between the case and strap cost? Now let's ramp up the self-awareness and add an Artem Hyperflex strap on this aviator. This is a $200 strap on a $165 watch. I love the color combo, but could anyone realistically pursue this configuration? The odd situation continues as you learn that this is a homage of a fairly uncommon watch. You see, when homaging watches, it's typical that a brand would reference an iconic style. But here you cannot deny the uncanny resemblance, starting with the cathedral hands that is a clear homage of the Hamilton Khaki Aviator. Last time I checked, no one is putting this Hamilton on any list of all-time popular watches. But here, Baltany chose to use almost the exact same hands. Granted that they are using these hands on many of their watches, but I'm pretty sure that Hamilton is also guilty of the same practice. This trickles down to other printed elements, another area of design assimilation, or piracy as I may boldly claim. Some functional parts also get the same treatment. As you can see, the railroad minutes track and the narrow bezel design are all hallmarks of the Hamilton khaki. As a lightning rod of blame, you cannot throw this one at me, as you can see for yourself that these two watches are interchangeable on anyone's wrist. There are, however, some differences that we can notice. Take that crown for example. There's a big difference here compared to the khaki aviator. The aviator has a pleasing curve to it that matches the case profile nicely. Here in this Baltany, it's rather flat and more raw looking. The dimensions of the crown is also telling as Hamilton chose a bigger piece compared to the numerals here. The proportions are closer on the Baltany version and This further draws it away from the impression. Hamilton did modernize the Khaki a bit with a display caseback, while Baltany kept the cost down by using a full metal back. I prefer this cleaner back as it sort of stays true to the field aviator heritage. Next is the lug shape. That's arguably the biggest departure from the Hamilton design. This is curved inward opposed to the outward shape of the Khaki. Hamilton's lugs also appear to be considerably longer than what Baltany is using. You two have a few considerations about this watch. Well, kinda. Salisbury says he ordered Baltany's dirty dozen and it's on its way. Jeff keeps his grumpy self by mistaking this for a 50 Fathoms, which some of you have corrected it. Adra Jeptovic loves the Khaki aviation so much that he loves this one too. And finally, perfectly useless comments on Baltany's military chrono, which has a really good build quality. Although a majority of the remarks were for a watch other than this aviator, there are still a few things to love, like this nicely textured dial. Yes, it looks rather plain, but when you have the chance to look closely, you'll be convinced that $100 watches can still excite even eye patch watch scalawags like me. Actually, considering the materials and quality that we see here, Baltany could have still offered this at $200 and I wouldn't have any issue buying one. But don't let this suspiciously paid reviewer fool you. I can't give Baltany all the glory for this design because it's really Hamilton that presented it first. And here's another thing, for every complaint I make about that friction fit bezel, there are likely 5 of you who would dismiss me because it's incredibly affordable. And that's totally fine because it really is part of the consideration. Baltany's unsung feature is really the C bottom price point. This is nothing new with Asian market watches, but Baltany stands out because its offerings cater to the crowd that also scrutinizes quality components. So here's another way to put it. Baltany made sure that the quality is there for the parts that matter. Sapphire crystal, ceramic bezel, decent case finish, you know, the obvious ones. Then they cut corners on the straps, mass-produced hardware, and subpar loom. And obviously no R&D for this design because it's a derivative of an uncommon but still recognizable watch. Baltany seems relatively fine with playing with these smaller markets. And as far as I can observe, they continue to produce these as they're available once again after selling out a few weeks ago. Built for the small market of mustachioed midget pilots and princess-wristed Asian YouTubers like me. And that is the Baltany Field Aviation Watch. I'm really surprised that they pretty much homage Hamilton here, but Hamilton released this kind of watch because they know that there's a market for these very small but very simple watches, and having that countdown timer also makes it a little bit more different compared to others. Still, I don't like that kind of you know, that friction fit bezel. I'm still a little bit too averse to that, but it's a solid watch that you can't go wrong, especially for that price. And the finishing and the uh, construction is also very solid, and having this in your collection is not a bad if you're beginning in watches, this is a great deal for you, and it could help you get into the doorway of watch collecting. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's probably a good thing for you with your as a hobbyist, but a bad thing for your wallet and for your wives. Of course, you have to convince them. But nevertheless, comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. Is Baltany uh did Baltany do its due diligence, or no? Did Baltany do right with homaging a very recent and obscure watch design from Hamilton, or would you rather them reference something else? Comment down below. Let me know what you guys think.